Spicy Toast Gaming here. Welcome to our Nilah guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. We're going to start off with a brief overview of the champion, just so you know some of their strengths and weaknesses, and whether or not this is a champion you want to invest your time as well as resources into. Up first, we have card duplication. This is the main theme of this deck. You're able to duplicate your cards sometimes multiple times in a round, letting you flood your board with powerful units or powerful spells. Next up then, we have fleeting and discard synergy. So the only other deck we really have with discard synergy is Jinx, the very first champion everyone gets, but we haven't really had any deck that has fleeting card synergy. So this gives you a very interesting playstyle and makes you feel very unique amongst the roster of champions. Next then, we have full board, full hand. So normally with this champion, you're going to have a full board and a full hand, so you always have something to play. You have many different options available to you, and quite often you're going to be overwhelming the enemy with just your massive amount of resources. Last up then, we have diverse relic builds. So this is a 2-cost champion. There's a lot of different ways you can build them, either focusing on stats to a very strong unit early, or also going for some relics that let you cheat out other stronger champions, or just focusing on your fleeting card discard playstyle. Many different approaches you can take with this champion, and so if you like a champion you can build in many different ways, this will be a perfect one for you. Alright, let's go hop in game to better explain some of the points we touched on here. In game now, you see we have her at level 30 with those 3 stars. For your star powers, first up we have each round copy the first 2 fleeting units or spells you play. So this is the 3-star version. If you just have the 1-star version, then it's just copying the first fleeting unit or spell that you're going to play. So essentially any landmarks or equipments are going to be the main things that aren't going to be able to get copied, but you generally don't want those copied anyways. So pretty solid star power. Duplication is one of the strongest effects in the game, so this can really help you out. Then for your 2-star, that +1 starting mana, and now create a copy of the first 2 cards you discard each round in your deck, then draw 1 fleeting at next round start for each. So the main way this works is you're not actually going to be manually discarding many cards, although you can do that with some cards you will pick up. The main way this works is your fleeting spells, you see they are discarded from your hand when the round ends. So you're going to be generating fleeting cards, and then those are automatically discarded at the end of the round. Now, important thing to note is this is only going to happen for the first 2 cards. So if you have 2 fleeting cards in your hand, you don't have to worry. Those will get shuffled back in your deck, and then at next round, you're going to draw more fleeting cards. This is very strong because only fleeting cards are the ones getting duplicated, so you always want to be playing 1 or 2 fleeting card every single round to get that duplication. But if you fill your hand with fleeting cards, you will be actually discarding many of those and not getting them copied, because again, it only works for the first 2 cards each round. Together though, these are some very powerful effects. You have a way that once you can make a couple fleeting cards, you can then just keep having fleeting cards every single round, and then when you're playing those fleeting cards, they're going to get duplicated up to 2 times. So very solid star powers. You just have to work on getting the proverbial ball rolling with getting a couple fleeting cards, which you're going to be able to have from your starting deck, relic builds, or star powers. Or not star powers, but powers you pick up in game. Taking a look at that starting deck now, up first you have the list, so 0 cost slow, grant an enemy vulnerable. If it already has vulnerable, the strongest ally starts a free attack challenging it. This has that Hextech Fabricator, so when this goes off, it'll give you a nice common item. Now, when you duplicate this, if it was fleeting, then it will immediately go off twice, giving you that free attack, so overall, very solid card. Next then, we have pick a card, down to a 1 cost because of that mana potion, burst. To play, place a card from your hand back into your deck, and then draw 2 at next round start and grant them fleeting. So this is a great way to generate some fleeting cards so that you can either play them next round, or even if you don't play them, they can then get shuffled back in your deck so you can keep drawing more fleeting cards. Really solid for your playstyle overall. Next then we have the Pool Shark, so 1 cost challenger with Shadow Totem with a 1/2 stat line. When I'm summoned, draw 1 at next round start and grant it fleeting. And then with that Shadow Totem, each copy is going to be triggering that effect. So essentially it's going to be draw 2 at next round start and grant them fleeting. Again, another cheap engine for you to be able to generate some more fleeting cards, but then also this having that Challenger and Shadow Totem, great for either dragging big blockers away so you can hit the Nexus, or using that ephemeral copy to block and not take Nexus damage, Overall, a very solid card. Next then we have Hired Gun, 2 cost, 4/3, so solid stat line. When I'm summoned, grant the strongest enemy vulnerable. Again, great for being able to get rid of enemy targets, but this can also pair well with the list. You play this first, you give an enemy vulnerable, and then you use the list to challenge them, starting a free attack. So nice little combo there you have within your cards. Then we have Nilah herself, so 2 cost, 2/3 with that brash. Can only be blocked by enemies with 3 or more health. Attack, create a slipstream in the top 6 cards of your deck. Now you're going to be able to generate these in several different ways. There's even items that can also generate these slipstreams. What they are is 1 cost burst, draw 2, and grant them fleeting. So again, another way that you can get some fleeting cards for you to either play or have them be shuffled back into your deck so you can draw more fleeting cards at next round start. Now her level up condition is you've drawn 16 or more cards. Once she levels up, she goes to a 3/4, and now attack, it's that same slipstream effect, but now deal 2 damage to all enemies and the enemy nexus. They can't drop below 1 health from this damage. So great way to chunk down the entire enemy board and the nexus, but then also this damage might drop them below 3 health, which remember from the brash means they won't be able to block you. Next then for her champion spell, you have that 1 cost burst, Formless Blade, deal 2 damage to a unit. It can't drop below 1 health from this damage. So again, you can't use this to kill the target, but you can make this drop below that 3 health so they can't block any of your brash units, including Nilah. One thing you can do though is you can pair this with another removal spell. So you can use this first and then drop them into the kill range to kill them with one of your other spells. That's another great use for this spell. Next then we have the Tidal Invocation. So 2 cost fast, deal 1 to a unit, spawn 1 for each damage dealt. With that charging sigil, that goes up to 2 more damage. This is pretty bad until you get that charging sigil. Once you do, then it's actually pretty solid, especially when you can duplicate it, so you can deal potentially up to 6 damage and then get a 6/6 tentacle. One thing to note is you're spawning based on the damage. So if the enemy has like barrier or if they have tough, if you're not going through and doing that full amount of damage, then this won't be spawning as large of a tentacle. Also, if this gets duplicated, if the first spell goes through and kills the target, then the second copied spell will just not do anything. There are some spells that can still trigger their second effect if the first effect doesn't go off, but here, if you don't do the damage, you don't get the tentacle. Just remember that as you're playing. Next up then we have the Slotplot. So this is actually a very solid card for you. So 3 cost, 1/4 by default, but then when I'm summoned or round start, grant me +1 health for each card you drew last round, and then shuffle my stats. So this can be a very massive unit for you because it keeps getting extra stats based on how much you're drawing, and you can draw a pretty ridiculous amount sometimes, so this can be a massive unit for you. It has that overwhelm. This is often a way you're going to be able to deal massive damage to the enemy nexus. Next up then we have Vikrosh the Exuberant. So 3 cost, 4/4 with that Phage, and it has Elusive and Attune. So that Attune going to give you 1 spell mana when you summon this unit, and when I'm summoned, create a slipstream in the top 6 cards of your deck. Great target for duplicating, solid elusive unit. You'll get 2 spell mana back and then create 2 slipstreams since you're summoning 2 copies of them. And those slipstreams, we already talked about them before, but draw 2 and grant them fleeting. So again, another solid unit that you can use to deal a lot of damage to the enemy nexus. Both of these two are going to be prime targets if you use the Corrupted Star Fragment on Nilah. That way you can consume them and get those strong keywords on stats on her and use her to end the game. Last up then we have the Buru Lookout. So 5 cost, 5/3 with that Brash and then Strike, draw 1. Then when I'm summoned, spawn 3. So this card, it's a little weird in this deck, but if you play this card when it's fleeting and you get it duplicated, it will massively shift the game in your favor, because now you're dropping essentially 3 5-drops or higher. Because you'd be dropping 2 of these with that 5/3, but then each one of them are going to be spawning 3, so they'll also be summoning a 6/6 tentacle. So while this unit isn't great for you, and you might want to consider cutting it from your deck, this will definitely swing games in your favor when you're able to get this card duplicated. Overall, I think the deck is fairly well made. It can be a little rough early with some cards like the Tidal Invocation, really feeling quite lackluster before you get that extra damage. But there's multiple ways to trigger your effect of getting some fleeting cards going. And then there's some interesting subcategories or sub playstyles in here with the multiple vulnerable synergy, multiple spawn synergy. It's really interesting and different ways you can go with this. Also, you have some solid keywords in your deck with both a strong overwhelm unit as well as a strong elusive unit. Now, the deck isn't crazy by any means, but I think they've actually done quite a good job with all the decks this expansion, and overall I think this is a solid addition to the roster. Let's go take a look at the champion levels so that you know when you're actually going to get these different upgrades. So up first, the Buru Lookout gets the Coral Crush Gauntlet, so that +1 damage and brash. This, again, is not great considering you often might want to cut this. And then normally this first upgrade is for one of your cheaper units, giving you a bigger boost early. It's a little sad that this is the first upgrade you're going to get. Next, at level 3, the List gets that Hex Tech Fabricator. Really solid upgrade. This can really help you out, giving you some pretty good keywords, including Quick Attack and Overwhelm. Next up then, at level 6, the Slotplot gets that Great Club, so Overwhelm, again, very solid upgrade. This will really help you end games much quicker. Pool Shark gets that Skirmishing Saber at level 9. This is a okay upgrade, but will be much better once this gets that Shadow Totem. At level 12, your Hired Gun gets the Pickaxe, going to a 4/3, really solid stat line for this unit. Next then, at 15, your Tidal Invocation gets that Charging Sigil, very powerful upgrade right here. This is going to go from a pretty niche, not great spell to actually a very solid removal and unit generation spell. At 18, your Buru Lookout gets another item, that Entrancing Lure. This is kind of the one issue, that the one card that you potentially want to cut from your deck is one of the cards that gets 2 items on it. That is a little bit annoying. Next, at 21, your Vikrash gets that Phage. Again, really helping this out. It being a 2/2 isn't really great, but going up with that Phage to a 4/4 makes it a very solid unit. Next then, at 24, the Pool Shark gets that Shadow Totem. Again, a massive upgrade, really going to help you out. And then for the last item at 27, pick a card, gets a Mana Potion going down to a 1 cost. So overall, the upgrades you're getting on your cards are pretty solid. Again, little annoying that the Lookout gets 2 of those upgrades, and then a lot of those higher level upgrades are really locked behind the higher levels, so she can feel a little bit rough in the early game or when she's at a lower level. Alright, let's go take a look at relics now, and there's a lot to talk about there. Up first, some of the relics that I've really been enjoying using. For one, the Gravedigger Spade. For the longest time, this has been pretty much a useless relic. It's now one of her best. So round start, draw 1 and give it fleeting. So if she's on the board, you're going to be able to generate a fleeting card. So you're going to have a card you can immediately play for that duplication. But again, even if you don't play it, it can then get shuffled back into your deck, so you get another fleeting card next round. Also, her level up condition is drawing cards, so just getting more card draw. Really solid right here. You're probably going to use this especially when you're leveling her up, just to have some more consistent fleeting card generation. Later on when you're higher level, it's not as important, but especially early, for your first rare relic, this is probably what you're going to want to be using. Next then, we have the Corrupted Star Fragment. So support, kill my supported ally, grant me its keywords and stats. Often your board can be somewhat flooded with units, so using this to kind of condense down your board and just putting all those stats and keywords onto Nilah is quite nice. And then often you can be grabbing some of the Overwhelm and Elusives that you already have in your deck and using them on her to then end the game. Really a solid addition and makes Nilah a very strong game finisher. Bounty Hunter's Renown then, just the best stat relic in the game. I have 1/1 for every 200 gold you have. Since she is such a cheap unit, being able to drop a massive unit on your board round 1 can really help you out. Normally something you're not really going to want to be using until you have multiple rare relics though. Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana. You do have a decent amount of spells, and she will be on the board, hopefully all game for you, so this will always be going off. Not a bad upgrade, not as necessary as I think many other champions though. Crown Guard Inheritance, when I level up Rally, she does have a fairly strong attack effect, especially once she levels up, so you could potentially try to combo this to end the game as soon as she levels. Green Glade Shadeleaf support, grant my supported ally elusive, always a solid option when you have a champion that's able to start on the board. just being able to grant your units elusive every single time you're attacking can be quite a powerful effect. The Blade Rack allies have Challenger, again normally going to be having a full board of units, so making sure all your units are able to attack and challenge the right target so you get the best attack possible. This can be quite a powerful effect. Luden's Tempest, all your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. You do have a decent amount of damage in your kit, and so increasing it all by 1 isn't a bad option. Star Gem, now this is actually very, very strong on Nilah. Allied champions have 1/1 and cost 2 less. Now those stat bonuses actually go on her as well, and so it's actually not bad putting 1, maybe even 2 of these on your champion. With having 2 of these on your champion, she's then going to go to a 4/5, which is a pretty solid stat line for a 2 cost, but then also your 4 cost champions or less will then be able to be free. There's a lot of solid 4 cost champions, so being able to play one of those round 1 as well for free with your allied Nilah can actually be quite strong. Don't sleep on this relic for her. Tempest Blade, when I level up, stun all enemies. Potentially you could combo this with Crown Guard Inheritance if you want to go for that classic board stun rally combo, but I don't necessarily think it's that great on her. Berserker's Buckle, when I survive damage, grant me 2/2. Now she is going to be on the board. Round 1, there's going to be a lot of attacks or blocks you're able to take, so trying to scale her up isn't a bad option. So throwing one of these on there could be a decent stat relic for you. Now the Deceiver's Crest and the Grand General's Counterplan. Both of these are making copies of your champion spell and making it cost 0. Well, the Deceiver's Crest makes it cost 0. I don't think this is necessarily the best option. Your champion spell is fine, but I don't think it's generally worth making extra copies of this. Normally you're going to be stacking Mila in your deck already, so normally you have more than enough of these. I don't think either of these relics is really worth using too much. For Nilah, the Loose Cannon's Payload, when I'm summoned, discard your hand and then create that many pow-pows in hand. Now this is a way to discard some of your hand so that you can get more cards next round, more fleeting cards, and this is a way you can get some removal. I don't think it's necessarily the best option by any means, but it is something you could play around with if you wanted. Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Again, a very solid option, just for trying to push as much damage as you can early. And then last up for the rare relics, the Voidborn Carapace. Evolve, and when any unit dies, grant me its keywords. Again, not necessarily the best option, but since you are a champion you can play round 1, you will be able to benefit from this hopefully the entire game. So she'll be able to make better use of this than most other champions. Alright, on to common relics. You probably want to go with the Z-Drive prototype, especially for your first common. So start adventures with 2 extra rerolls. There's a lot of solid powers for this champion, so being able to reroll a little bit more aggressively to try to get those, especially if you're just starting her out, and even more so if you don't have her star powers yet, you're really going to be wanting to reroll towards some specific powers that we'll get into later. So this is often the best option for your common relic. If you're not wanting to use that though, or you're just wanting to fill in maybe your last relic and you don't think you really need it, the Rage Blade, not bad. Again, she's on the board at your start of the game, so every single attack she'll be able to scale up a little bit more. Not too bad. Banshee's Veil if you want that protection. Lost Chapter if you want some extra spell mana. Chameleon's Necklace if you just want some extra copies so you can make sure you can play her round 1. Always good to have. And then the Star Child Staff, Game Start, heal your Nexus 5. I feel like this relic is slept on quite a lot, but if you're struggling with taking a little bit too much damage, this can really help you out and lets you just avoid some blocks because you know you're going to heal up anyways, thereby saving your units and being able to then attack more aggressively. That's it for relics though. Let's go look at what powers, support champions, and cards you might want to look for, as well as finishing off with our ranking of the champion. Alright, taking a look at some powers now. Here on the left we have Fast Deal. So rare, round start, draw 1, give it fleeting. When you discard a card, create a copy of it into your deck. This is kind of the perfect star power for you. Well, not star power, just power you get in game. 1, you gain extra draw, and you're getting fleeting by default every single round. So you're able to play more fleeting cards and get that duplication starting immediately. Very, very nice for you. And then also it has that effect of when you discard a card, create a copy of it into your deck. This is similar to your second star power, but here it doesn't have a limitation. For your second star power, remember, it's only 2 cards that get put back into your deck. Here though, it's just every card that you discard, it's creating a copy in your deck, so very, very solid for you. Next then, here in the middle, we have Quick Draw. This is actually now a rare relic. Haven't been able to get a picture of it yet, but cards you draw cost 1 less this round. Again, you're drawing a whole bunch of cards, so letting them be a little bit cheaper. Really solid. Also, most of your deck is fairly cheap. having it cost 1 less is actually pretty impactful. Last then here we have Higher Education. When you draw a card, give allies 1 power this round. Again, you're able to draw a crazy amount of cards sometimes. This will really help you push a ton of extra damage and end games much, much faster. These 3 are generally the best powers in the game for you. Really look out for these if you can see them. Next up, we have the Craftsman favor here. Round start, create a fleeting time and dedication in hand. Now, there's a lot of different powers that are very similar, but any of the ones that are just creating a fleeting card for you, so there's like the one that's creating the Blade's Edge, or the Feral Prescience, counterfeit copies. There's a lot of different powers like this. Any of them will work for you, because you can play them if you want and get them duplicated, but you can just wait for them to get discarded, and then you're going to be getting an extra fleeting card next round. So any of these spells can really be a benefit for you. Definitely look out for them if you see them. Next here for Spellslinger, your spells cost 1 less. This is very solid for you because most of your spells are already very cheap, and so this is either going to make them free or generally just cost 1, so really solid upgrade for you. Next then we have one of the new powers added, the Urumi Shield. So common, when you play a spell, heal 1. If it was elemental, heal 2. This is going to give you a massive amount of sustain. Most of your spells are elemental. With Nilah, you can actually take a decent amount of damage, but this will let you constantly be healing back up to full. Really solid upgrade for you. Next then we have Memory Game. So rare, round start, create a fleeting copy of the last non-fleeting cards you played. Another power that's giving you a fleeting card every single round, so very solid, but this one you have a little bit more power over because you can choose what card gets copied, since it's just going to copy whatever the last non-fleeting cards you played every round. So this one, generally to get the most out of it, is going to take a little bit more planning, but this can really help you out since that fleeting card it's generating for you, you can choose what it is, and then it can be duplicated by your star powers, so a very, very strong power for you to look out for. Next then we have Crush. Allies have Overwhelm. Really solid effect, really helping you end games much faster. Then Domination, Round Start, Rally. This is very good, especially for Nilah, since you are a champion that one can be on the board round 1, but then normally you're also able to flood your board early with units since you're getting your cards duplicated. This really helps you put on the pressure early. And then Nilah also has a attack effect, so being able to attack every single round to trigger her attack effect is very, very solid. That's it for the powers we have here, but there's plenty of other powers that also work very well. Definitely encourage you to experiment and see what you like best. Alright, let's move on to support champions. As always, this isn't going to be an exhaustive list, just some things to consider when looking at support champions. So up first, we have draw. You have tons of draw in your kit, but you sometimes like even more. So any champion that can give you some more draw or benefits from draw themselves is a great option for you. Next, we have strong early units. You really want to be controlling that early game, and if you can duplicate some solid aggressive early units, that can really help you just control that game. Next then, we have Star Gem Strong Champion. So if you're using Star Gem, you want to be looking for a strong champion that you can potentially play for free. So this is going to be based on the amount of Star Gems you're using. If you're using 2, then any champion that costs 4 or less, you'll be able to play for free. So that's what you want to look out for. And then next up, if you're using the Corrupted Star Fragment, you want to be looking for specific keywords on cheap units that you can quickly transfer over to your Nilah. First for draw, we have Twisted Fate. Very powerful champion, but often can be hard to level up because you have to draw so many cards. Here though, you'll be able to level him up quite quickly and then let him start dominating the game for you. Next then we have Fiora. This one works both for strong early units as well as a strong champion. So she is a 4 cost and she has some decent cheaper units with her. So her whole package will be able to be pretty strong for you, especially if you are using those star gems, because then he'll be able to bring you on the board round 1 with your Nilah. Next then we have Renekton. He fits into the same camp of having strong early units, but also is a very strong champion that again, 4 cost, you'll be able to play that for free if you're using double star gems. Last then we have Ari. So she's a 2 cost champion. So if you're using just 1 star gem, again, you can play it for free. She also works for keywords with the Corrupted Star Fragment and also works for the draw, because with her as part of her support package, you get the Dancing Droplet, which is a 1-cost elusive and has the effect of when it's recalled, you draw 1. So if you just want it for that cheap elusive, that would be decent. If you wanted it for a free champion and you're using 1 star gem, that would also work. And if you wanted some extra draw, you could manually recall that unit with Ari to get even more draw. Again, though, this isn't a exhaustive list. Nilah works with many different champions and has a lot of different mechanics built into her deck that can be focused on to work with many others. For instance, you have so much spawn in your deck that going with Alawi would also be a solid option. But enough about support champions. Let's go take a look at some cards you might want to look out for. With Nilah, you really want to be on the lookout for powerful cards because you're able to duplicate them to get extra effects. So here we have the Windborn Mariner on the left, 2-cost quick attack, 3/1. When you've drawn 3 or more cards this round, I cost 2 less. With Nilah, you're pretty much always drawing 3 or more cards every round, so this card will pretty much always be free for you. Really solid option. Next, Pocket Aces, so 3 cost first. When drawn, I cost 1 less this round. Grant an ally 2/1, so a permanent buff. And then normally, since you're drawing so many cards, you'll be able to play this the round you see it. And if this gets duplicated, you're really giving a unit a massive amount of stats. Next, then we have the Slippery Wave Rider, so down to a 3 cost because of that item. 4/4 elusive with Attune. Again, just a solid unit. That's really what you often want to be looking out for. Just a solid unit that you're able to try to duplicate to swing the advantage in your favor. Next then, Barbed Chain, 2 cost burst. Plunder, I cost 2 less, so this could be played for free. And then draw 2 at next round start and grant them fleeting. That's really an effect you want quite often. Just the ability to draw more fleeting cards next round, so you always have cards to duplicate. Then last up, Emperor's Prosperity, 2 cost burst, draw 2. Very simple card, but since draw is core to your kit, might be a nice option to have. All right, that's it for cards. Let's go take a look at our final rankings for her. So to start off, we think before level 20, she's really around a C tier champion. Not really the best and can sometimes be hard to get rolling. If you don't have any way to draw consistently fleeting cards, you can really struggle. Once you get her close to being maxed out though, after level 20, she can go up to an A tier champion, really solid. Part of that is just because she's a 2-cost champion, and those are all really strong. As far as regional rankings, we're going to put her at the top. Now, this is top, not best. Not confident enough to say she's better. There are some very strong other champions in Bilgewater, such as Nami, that I'm not really confident putting Nilah above, but I'd say she's up there with the top champions of the region. For some pros, card duplication, one of the strongest effects in the game, really good. And then supports diverse play styles. There's a lot of different ways you can try to play her, which is very nice. As far as cons, she can be weak early. Now this is more meaning early levels, not necessarily early game. Self-milling, so that means you can draw too many cards, and especially too many fleeting cards, so they just all get discarded. And so you just run out of cards and lose the game. And with that, often you will have overdraw, where you might already be at 10 cards, but you just keep accidentally drawing more. So if you don't like watching all of your cards getting obliterated because you're overdrawing, this champion could be very frustrating for you. That's it for the guide though. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, definitely like and subscribe. We will be putting a tier list out shortly after this video in the next few days, now that we have all the champions back at level 30 with 3 stars and have guides out for all of them. Hope you liked the video though, and I hope you all have a great day.